A very warm welcome to one and all. Namaskar, Pranam. We welcome you all on this 7-day inaugural session of Secrets of Yoga Therapy with the Gita Nanda Yoga Tradition. I welcome all the participants over here, and it is being streamed in the social media as well. To all the participants in the social media also, we welcome you all. And on this special inaugural session, and after the yoga day, we all celebrated yoga day. On this day, we have started a new initiative to build a awareness program where we can aware people of something extra from the practices that we do in yoga. So just to start with, I would like to first welcome you all, and just a brief introduction of what we will have in this whole 7-day awareness program. So, as you all know, that the heading the secrets of yoga therapy, a 7-day yoga awareness program with Gita Nanda yoga tradition. So, yoga therapy is the core, but knowing yoga therapy, but before knowing yoga therapy, we must know what the actual scenario of yoga is. So, in broader sense, we know that a definition of health, we all know that the WHO has given that health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. But the definition given in the Ayurveda text by Maharshi Shushruta, Samadoshaha Samagnischa Samadhatu Manah Kriya Prasan Atmendriya Manha Swast Ityabhidhiyate, where he defines whole the physical, mental, social, emotional, and the spiritual component of health. So we should know that what the actual dimension of health is, and yoga plays a very vital role in playing this. So yoga therapy is a part of the whole core concept of yoga. So let's start today's webinar, or we can say the Secrets of Yoga program, Yoginar. And let's begin with the invocation. We will first start with the Gayatri Mantra, then Guru Gayatri Mantra. So a request to all to join with me. Om Bhurabhuvah Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Naha Prachodaya. Guru Gayatri. Om Tat Purushaya Vidmahe Jnanalingeshwaraya Dhimahi Tanno Guru Prachodayati. Om Yoga Maharshi Dr. Swami Gita Nandagiri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai. So I welcome you all again on this Live Holistic platform, where we are trying to make people aware of the yoga therapy. And as we all know, that the secret of yoga therapy is with the Gita Nanda yoga tradition. We will be hearing the wisdom of the Gita Nanda tradition. And before that, I would like to start with a brief introduction of what the Live Holistic Wellness is all about. And Live Holistic Wellness initiative, which try to provide the holistic health, as the name also says, the holistic, and the overall wellness is the core concept of core concept of Live Holistic Wellness. It all started back in 2018 when it tried to help people in overall wellness, and yoga is the aspect which covers the every dimension of health. And last year also, the Live Holistic team tries to make people aware of holistic well-being by educating the students from various parts of our country, and more than 700 plus students were participated in that program. And due to the COVID program last year, it all started through the online medium. So that was the all start, and from that, in this year, we all just take a next step in which we all try to come a step more forward, and try to make people more aware of what actually the yoga therapy is, and what actually we should know, as all we are the yoga professionals, and we should know what actually yoga is all about and what the difference is between yoga and yoga therapy. So without taking much of time, I would like to first welcome our all chief guests, and I would like to welcome the Director of Live Holistic Wellness, Mr. Kailash Manji. I'd like to welcome Dr. Ananda Balyogi sir, and all the mentors of Geetananda Yoga Tradition, all the participants, and all my dear friends and colleagues. So I'd like to welcome you all again, and uh, I'd like to welcome, I'm inviting Mr. Kailash Manji to speak a few words to start this program. Respected Kailash Manji.
Yeah, thank you, Nilachal, for introducing Live Holistic and sharing its vision for holistic wellness. And I welcome everyone who are joining from across the globe for this 7-day awareness program around yoga therapy, secrets of yoga therapy. And nowadays, health has become our priority, and yoga is the only way which shows the path to health and wellness. And I would like to thank Yogacharya Dr. Ananda Balyogi ji and Geetananda Yoga Tradition for accepting the invitation to share the knowledge to one and all. And I hope everyone will be benefited from these sessions and make most of it. And I would like to move to Nilachal to move with the proceedings forward. Thank you everyone, and have an insightful evening.
Thank you, sir. And for the most awaiting moment, when you will hear the wisdom of the Geetananda Yoga Tradition from our Honorable Yogacharya, Dr. Ananda Balyogi Bhavanani. Sir, just to give a brief introduction, giving introduction to him is really not a thing to do, because if we go through the profile, we will see a lot of things, but I would like to try with a few introduction of our speaker of the day, day one. So Dr. Yogacharya, Dr. Ananda Balyogi Bhavanani, sir, is the son and successor of the Yoga Maharshi Dr. Swami Geetananda Giri Guru Maharaj, and Yogacharini Kalima Mani Amma Ji Sri Srimati Meenakshi Devi Bhavanani, and he is the chairman of the ICER, International Center for Yoga Education and Research at Ananda Ashram and Yogananjali Natyalayam, the Prevar Institute of Yoga and Carnatic Music and Bharatanatyam in Pondicherry. Sir is also a gold medalist in the medical studies, MBBS with postgraduate diploma in both family health as well as yoga. A fellow of the Indian Academy of Yoga, he has authored 19 DVDs and 25 books and 31 compilations on yoga, as well as published more than 250 papers, compilations, and abstracts on yoga and yoga research in national and international journals. Dr. Ananda Balyogi Bhavanani sir is currently member of numerous expert committees of Ministry of Ayush, including its National Body for Promotion of Yoga and Naturopathy, Scientific Advisory Committee, Technical Committee of Yoga Certification Board, expert committees for celebration of International Yoga Day, and Yoga and Diabetes Program. He is consultant resource person for the WHO Collaborative Center in Traditional Medicine at Morarji Desai National Institute of Yoga, New Delhi. He is also executive committee member and director of publications of the Indian Yoga Association. And apart from this, he is a very humble and very guru to me. And he is the person who inspired many yoga teachers, instructors, therapists, professionals like me. And he is keep inspiring and motivating other yoga professionals and all other people who are trying to do something new and helping them to do something that will be beneficial in the field of yoga and the culture of yoga. And there is a saying that Sahitya, the literature, Kala, the skill, and Sangeet, and the music, all three, when these are combined together, and the person is called to be a holistic. He can be holistic when all these Sahitya, Sangeet, and Kala are together combined. So he is a multi-dimensional personality, and giving an introduction to him is really not, I can't do that, but just I tried. So I welcome you, sir, on this Secrets of Yoga Therapy, and over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nilachal, for the kind introduction and to live holistic wellness, for this opportunity to share a living tradition of yoga, a parampara. I was very happy that you started with the traditional Gayatri mantra and then the Guru Gayatri. We need to connect to the source. And when we connect to the source, life, yoga then comes alive in us. Because it's like an electricity bulb. You may have the best electrical bulb, but if it's not connected to an electrical source, it will not give you light. You may have the best computer, supercomputer, but if it's not connected to the electrical source, well, it's not going to be of any good to you. The same thing with yoga. Yoga is something that has to be connected to the source if it is to be yoga. When it is disconnected to the source, what happens is that you have the body but not the life. And most people today, what we have in our hand is the body of yoga, which is huge also. But we don't have the living entity called the spirit of yoga anymore. Because we have the supercomputer, we have the best washing machine, we have the best, microwave oven, but there is no electrical source. And when there's no electrical source, it's as good as junk. And that is where we are today. So the key message I want to start off with today is that when we talk about secrets, first of all, my father would say the biggest secret is there are no secrets. But if I have to say there are some smaller secrets, I would say the first secret we have to keep in mind is that we need to be connected to the source of yoga. Just as a river to be alive needs to be connected to the source, which is the glaciers in the high Himalayas. Because a river disconnected from the source will not be a river, it will be a bed of sand. And then people will do sand mining. There won't be any nourishing water in that river anymore. This is what has happened today. So the first key message, we need to connect to the source. The second key message is yoga is all about sharing. Sharing with care and caring with love. So there has to be a love. A love for what? A love for the teachings. There has to be a love for the tradition. And there has to be a love for humanity. Otherwise, again, the connection is lost. So, two messages here that I have started off today with is that the connection to the source is vital for it to be what it is supposed to be, for yoga to be what it's supposed to be. And the second thing is, if you want to keep it alive, you have to keep sharing, caring with love. And this love must be unconditional. If you share based on conditional love is transactional. And anything transactional becomes quantitative. And anything quantitative will be finite. So the caring, sharing should be with love that is unconditional so that it moves from quantitative to qualitative nature. Because something that is qualitative is beyond measurement. Quality is beyond measurement. Quantity is within measurement. So the most important aspect of any yoga tradition, and I do not claim that only our tradition is correct. I have deep respect for all traditions. And I feel that each tradition has its own uniqueness within its context. But today we have lost the context of tradition. We have lost the traditional context, and we have lost the context of yoga also. Yoga out of context is not yoga anymore. And yoga out of the traditional context, well, again, you're going to have the body, but there's not going to be any life there. And if there's no life, there's no light. And if there's no light, you cannot perceive. And if you cannot perceive, you cannot grow. And if you are not growing, you might as well be going and having finger chips in Big Mac and having a nice Coca-Cola. Why yoga? Why yoga? Because yoga is transformational. Yoga is transformational. It must transform your physical, mental, social, and spiritual experience. And I just gave you 4 domains that are the domains that WHO talks about when it talks about health. Physical, mental, social, and spiritual domains. Those 4 domains must be transformed in you if it is really yoga. There will be a physical transformation. You will find you understand your body better. Now, if you understand your body better, you will be sensitive to what you put into your body. The achar of yoga as a lifestyle will come in automatically. You'll realize if I eat unhealthy junk food, I am becoming a junkyard. And you'll stop eating unhealthy junk food. Not because somebody told you. Not because the Hatha Pradipika tells you, or Garanta Samhita tells you, or Dr. Ananda tells you. It is because you are so sensitive, you don't want to put junk into yourself anymore. You are not going to get into any negative, viparita buddhi, bad habits, destructive habits, because you have become sensitive to the body. That is the physical transformation. You start to understand the limitations of your body. You start to understand the strengths of your body. You go through a SWOT analysis. You start to do a SWOT analysis of your own body. You start to understand what are your strengths physically. What are your limitations? What are the opportunities and what are the challenges you need to watch out for? This is called transformation of the body through yoga. How does this happen? Well, asana, kriya, mudra, bandha, they start to give you this. And we all start in our tradition with jatis. Because you have to first know that you have some fingers and you have to shake them. Then you know I have some fingers, I have a hand. If you go straight into Dhanurasana, you don't even know what your hand is, where your fingers are, where your toes are, and you're trying to go into Dhanurasana. No, you have to first understand every bit of yourself, top to bottom or bottom to top. The second transformation is of the mind. How do you transform the mind? Chanchalam hi mana Krishna, says Arjuna to Krishna. This mind is so turbulent like the wind. So you say, okay, I'm going to control the mind. Good luck. Good luck. You want to control the mind directly and you go to the mind and say, I want to control you. Yeah. It's like trying to discipline a teenager by saying, I'm going to discipline you. Good luck. Good luck. Good luck. So what do you have to do? You have to do lateral thinking. You have to have a lateralized approach. You cannot directly work with the mind because the mind is like a mirage. It's there. You say, it's there. I'm going to catch it. You get close to it, it disappears. That is why Ma Sita Devi, she got stuck because she saw that golden deer. Our mind is like that. The closer you go to it, the more farther it will disappear. You think you have caught it and it runs away. It disappears. So what do? You have to do lateral approach. So the mind thinks you're not dealing with it. You say, I'm not going to deal with you. I'm just going to deal with my breathing. I am not going to do anything with you. The mind is very happy. It says, he's not busy with me. I'm safe. And you start to work with your breathing. And our great teachers of the past have told us, Chale vate chale chittam. These are the teachings we have forgotten. We memorize these verses, but we don't understand them. We know them, but we don't have the wisdom of the verses. We have the knowledge, but not the wisdom. So what are we doing? We are transforming the mind through the methodology of using the breath. Because the moment you start working with the breath, immediately your emotions are transformed. Immediately your mind is transformed. And you bring about a transformation of what would be called the Pranamaya Manomaya Kosha. Now you have transformed the body. You have transformed the mind. Now what happens? As you transform your body and mind, you know yourself better. And when you know yourself better, you will be able to understand others better. Your social transformation will start to occur. Why do we have problems in relationships? Because we don't know ourselves. Everybody gives crash courses in relationship building. They write books on relationship building. And it's always about the other person. No, it's about you. You want a healthy relationship, you have to understand yourself. And as I love to say these days, be the person you wish to have in your life. You be the person you wish to have in your life, and the person you wish will be there. What needs to be will be there, because the more you understand yourself, the more understanding you will become of other people. The less you understand yourself, the less you will understand and be understanding of others and have the social turmoil and friction that occurs. Where does this understanding come from? Buddhi. That discernment that can take a look at yourself. You point your CCTV on yourself, the camera on yourself, not outside. The power of Swadhyaya. The power of Swadhyaya is the power of the Swadhyaya is the gym for the Buddhi. Swadhyaya is the gymnasium for the Buddhi. Because you are constantly asking yourself, you are reflecting on yourself, self-reflection. Instead of saying, what are they doing? What are they thinking? Where are they going? You say, what am I thinking? What am I doing? What is my role in this mess? The moment you ask yourself the question, what is my role in this mess? You can start transforming your relationships and your social health. Physical health, the transformation. Mental health, the transformation. Social health, the transformation. And as you start to understand yourself better, you start to move inward. And as you move inward, automatically the Yama Niyama, they come alive in you. Because when you move inward, you cannot go into the Vitarka. The Vitarka cannot affect you because you have gone deep inside. You know what is real and what is not real. And you start to say, yes, there's a Vitarka saying, punch somebody in the nose. You know it is a Vitarka. Now, if you didn't come to this stage, you think, oh, punch somebody in the nose, you punch them. And then you ask yourself, why did I punch? I had a friend, SP Singh in college. He used to go into every fight in the hostel. And he'll start fighting with everybody. I used to ask him, SP, do you even know who's right and who's wrong? He said, no, we will first do the fight and then we'll worry about who's right or wrong. He had awareness to know what he was doing. That is the greatness of my dear SP Singh. Most people are like that. They go and do it and then they try to rationalize why they are doing it. So then the Buddhi is used to create an excuse why you have done the dumb thing you have done in the first place. But when you start to understand yourself, you realize there's a Vitarka. It says be violent. It says speak the untruth. It says steal that which is not yours. These are Vitarkas, deviants from the Yama. Everything that is anti-Yama, anti-Niyama is a Vitarka. These are the anti-Yama, anti-Niyama. The moment they surface in your consciousness, you now catch them. And you say, hey, I know what's going to happen with you. And you say, well, I am going to treat you with what is called Pratipaksha Bhavanam. Where is that coming from, Pratipaksha Bhavanam? The Buddhi. And the Buddhi is the tool for Pratipaksha Bhavanam, but something even higher than the Buddhi is involved in Pratipaksha Bhavanam. And that is called the Atma. Because you are starting to purify yourself. You are going through a Shuddhi process. Because one of the niyamas, remember one of the niyamas, what is it? Saucha. And what does Saucha tells us? Sattva Shuddhi Saumanasya Ekagraya Indriya Jaya Atma Darshana Yogyatvanicha. You are starting to become capable of Atma Darshana. The power of Saucha as a principle of transformation. That is where then what is happening? Your spiritual transformation is occurring. You have transformed the body, you have transformed the mind, you have transformed your relationships, and now you are transforming the self. What do you mean by transforming the self? You are taking everything that is not the self away. There is a huge stone. You are taking away from that stone everything that is not the statue. You are your own sculptor. You are your own sculptor. You have the chisel and you are chiseling yourself. And you are chiseling away what is not you so that what is you can shine forth. This is how yoga is transforming us. And this is what is the key secret of therapy. It is not about what is the yoga asana for diabetes. Some people signed up may have been expecting Dr. Ananda will say, which is the secret kumbhaka that will help you eradicate asthma. No kumbhaka will eradicate asthma if you are still caught up with junk food. Doesn't matter what kumbhaka you do. You have to do the most important kumbhaka of keeping your mouth closed when junk food is in front of you. That is the junk food nirahara kumbhaka. Nirahara kumbhaka of junk food. Close your mouth. As someone said, how is the way to get on with life? They said, close your mouth whenever there's junk food in front of you. Close your mouth whenever somebody is nasty to you. What do we do when they're nasty to us? We want to be nastier to them. Close your mouth kumbhaka. Is a good kumbhaka for that. See, everybody wants the secret technique that you do once and you cure yourself. Yoga is all about life transformation. And this is why when we want to understand it, we need to understand a tradition. In this tradition that I have received, and so many of our mentors have received from my beloved father, Swami Gitananda Giri. Swamiji was not only my father, he was my guru. And when I think of Swamiji, I think of him as my guru father. My first relationship is guru, second is father. Of course, when I think of Ammaji, it is more mother and then guru. There's a slight difference in perspective here. Guru father, but mother guru. And it is basically how the relationship is. Swamiji codified this system, a system which today we call Gitananda Yoga, but he used to use the term Rishi Yoga. Because this is a yoga that is connected to the living culture that has come from the great Maharishis of our culture. And in this case, the lineage is traced back through his guru, Swami Kanakananda Bhrigu Guru Maharaj. Swami Kanakananda Bhrigu. He was a disciple of Swami Vividhishananda Bhrigu, who was a disciple, a shishya of Swami Purnananda Bhrigu. This is the immediate tradition that we know of. And it is said this lineage goes all the way back to the great Maharishi Bhrigu himself, who has given us what is today called the Atharvana or Atharva Veda. The Atharva Veda is related to Bhrigu Maharishi. And Atharva Veda is the root of what today we call Tantra. People think Tantra is some recent invention. No, no, no. It has the roots in Atharvana Veda, where the concepts of Manga are out very, very strong. And we find it even in Maharishi Patanjali's teachings. When he talks about the attainment of vibhutis, Janma Oshadi Mantra Tapa Samadhija Siddhayaha. That those siddhis that are coming in the Vibhuti Pada, this verse comes into the Kaivalya Pada, there's that overlap. But he says the Vibhutis, the siddhis, Janma Oshadi, Mantra Tapa Samadhija. How do you get that siddhi? Now, what is a siddhi? A siddhi is a state of perfection. This is one way to understand siddhi. To get a state of perfection. That is why Lord Krishna says, Siddhi and asiddhi. Siddhya asiddhayo samatva samatvam yoga uchate, he says. In success, failure. So siddhi as success, perfection, wholesomeness, completeness. That is one way to understand the word siddhi. So the root of this tradition that has been given by Swamiji to us, which he received as a young boy from his guru, Swami Kanakananda Bhrigu, traces the lineage all the way back to the great Rishi Bhrigu himself. And this is why in this tradition, great importance is placed on two aspects. Well, many aspects, but two I want to stress on at this point. One is energy. Everything is energy. What is that energy? Prana. Everything is energy. So in the Gitananda tradition, it doesn't matter whether you are doing what we call a jati, which is a simple unit of movement, a kriya, which is a systematic, rational sequence of movements, or whether it is an asana, bandha, kriya, mudra. Every technique in this tradition will be based on energy. For example, commonly when people do Shavasana, they'll do it with their legs apart. This is the common Shavasana. Even in common yoga protocol, it is there, which everybody did yesterday. Commonly, you will see the photo. But if you look in our tradition, Shavasana will be done with the heels together and the feet falling apart, but the heels are touching. And this is because you want to conserve the circuit of energy when you are doing Shavasana also. Because Shavasana becomes the foundation for what we call Jnana Yoga, Kriyas and Prakriyas. So if you are keeping your legs apart, you are keeping the circuit open, and what has happened, that closed circuit of energy has been lost. And so it is like the key, in the physics experiment, the key has not been connected, so the wires are not connected. The feet are apart, the energy is just going out, that's all. But the moment you keep the heels together, the energy starts to circulate throughout your body. So your body becomes a circuit of energy when you do Shavasana with the heels together. Now people say, oh, it doesn't help me relax so much. Okay, if you want physical relaxation, keep your feet apart. But you will lose energy. So you will have physical relaxation, but loss of energy. So what do you want? You want to energize yourself. Shavasana is the practice where you re-energize yourself so that you come back stronger. It is like the battery that has been put into the charger and connected to the circuit to make that battery now have full charge. Not discharge the battery, you want to recharge the battery. And so Shavasana as the base, for then Savitri Pranayama, Kaya Kriya, Marmanastanam Kriya, and all the Jnana Kriyas that come through that. Similarly, why do we do right side and then left side? Because we want to balance the equal and opposite energies, which are called Ha and Ta. Hatha Yoga is not physical exercise, it is the balancing of the energies. So whenever we do the asana, which can be done on right and left, please do the right side first, left side second. Because when you do the right side, it is activational. And when you do the left side, it is deactivation. Activation followed by deactivation creates balance, samatvam. Now you ask most people which side to do first, they say any side you do. Or you do only one side, who cares? You can do 5 more asana. If you don't do, you do Trikonasana on one side, you do, each of these asanas on one side, and you can get 5 more asanas, variety, the spice of life. See, if you don't do right and left, you are going to become imbalanced. Energy-wise, you will be imbalanced. And this is why in this tradition, the importance given to energy awareness in all the practices. It is very, 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 very important. Because if you are not keeping track of the energy balance, what will happen is, at the end of your yoga abhyasa, your yoga sadhana, you will not be alive, you will be dead. Now, at the end of your practice, you should come out alive. You should have more energy. If you come out tired and de-energized, something is wrong with your practice. And most of the time, This is happening to teachers and therapists. Now at this point, I see more than 50 people on the Zoom room, but I only see about 20 people having the video on. Now, if you are in a compromising situation, don't put your video on. But if you're not in a compromising situation and you can put your video on, please put it on, because I love to know who's on the other side of the screen. I am not teaching a computer. I am teaching human beings. I am not a computer yoga therapist. I am a human yoga therapist. So unless there's some reason for not putting your video on, please keep it on so that I can see your face. When I see you, I can smile at you. If I just see your name, how can I smile at you? If I see a black screen out there and I give you a black screen, what will it be like? Blank meets blank. And we are not firing blanks there, okay? We want to connect. Connection is yoga. Disconnect is yoga. We don't want a disconnect. We want connection. Thank you so much. When we connect, we are alive. When your body connects to the breath and the breath connects to the mind and the mind connects to the spirit, and this whole entity called you connects to other people in your immediate society, you are alive. If your body is disconnected from the breath, your breath is disconnected from the mind is disconnected from the spirit, and the spirit is disconnected from everybody else, you are basically jada. You are dead. There are a lot of zombies walking around these days. You become disconnected zombie. Well, we are in Zoom womb, but we want to be Zoom womb to be nourished. The e-Gurukula, not becoming zombies. Look at people. Huh? You want to be alive. That was the greatness of my father. He was completely alive 24 hours a day. Vitality was there in each and every cell. People ask me, how do you manage things? I say, well, being born to such parents, there's no way out. Huh? I'm blessed with the physical genetics and the spiritual genetics of both of these amazing people. And it is then my dharma, because I am fortunate and blessed, it is my dharma to share. Because I have already said, if you don't share, you are losing. Sharing, caring, loving is living. So let's get back to our topic. We talked about energy. Everything will be energy based. So when, Kalavati talks about asana, or you have Sangeeta talks about pranayama, or Jnanadev, Meena and Balaji and all will talk. What you will find is there again and again we are talking about the importance of being aligned with energy. It is not just the physical body alignment, it is energy alignment. And this energy alignment is one of the most important aspects of this tradition. Now, if you want to be connected to this energy, what do you need to have? You need a catalyst. You need a catalyst to be connected to the energy. What is it that connects you to this energy? Well, that is called prana, and that is called prana ayama. Pranasya ayama pranayama. And in this tradition, right from lesson 1, in step by step, my father has pranayama introduced. Someone was asking me about it. They say, oh, shouldn't asana come before pranayama? See, asana coming before pranayama is in the sequence of the practice, in the concept of Ashtanga Yoga. It doesn't mean always asana has to come before pranayama. It depends on you that day. It depends on the individual. It depends on the individual needs. Desha, Kala, Sankhya. There are different aspects to be taken into consideration. Whether you need to calm down. Where does a yoga class start? Some people say standing. Some people say sitting. Some people say lying down. Well, it depends. If in the morning you come to class and you want to kickstart your day, well, standing is a good place to start, because otherwise you'll go to sleep. If in the morning yoga class you start lying down, you'll go to sleep. You won't attend the rest of the class. But in the evening, after a hard day's work, all the stress is there and you come to the yoga session, you are going to carry your tension into the yoga session. So maybe it is a good idea to first relax for 10 minutes before starting your yoga practice. So the approach, whether it is standing or lying down, depends on what is your state, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, and where you want to go. So important. This is absolutely important, because if we don't understand it, we say, oh, always you have to do, first you have to do Thalasana, then you have to do Trikonasana, then you have to do Parshvakonasana, then you have to do Ardha Utkatasana, then you have to do Matsyasana, then you have to do Sarvangasana, then you have to do Sirsasana. You get stuck with something that any robot can do. Any mobile app can do that. Even a mobile app will do better because there is artificial intelligence. The importance given to artificial intelligence shows our human stupidity. We are undermining the human intelligence. So coming back, you want to balance energies. You want to connect to energy. What is the source of connection? How do you open yourself? What is the password? How do you put the electrical line from your house to the outside main? The outside there is electricity on the main. How do you connect from there to your house? You need an electrical wire to connect. That electrical connection, wireless connection, Wi-Fi connection to the prana is pranayama. So now you have a new one. Pranayama is the Wi-Fi connection to prana. Prana is there. We are disconnected to it. Prana is there, we are disconnected. And so what happens? For most people, the only prana they get is from food. Because food also has prana. So they say, morning I didn't eat, sir. I cannot come to work because I'm so tired, I didn't have my breakfast. You should be able to go without food at least 1 week and still do your regular activities. It means that you have become totally dependent on food for being a prana source. Sir, I'm not feeling well, sir. I haven't drank any water since morning. What is the next source of prana? Water. Not bottled water, fresh flowing water. Bottled water has no prana, it has only plastic in it. Plastic residues. You go to Europe today and you cannot get water out of a plastic bottle anymore. What a pity. And now in India. Earlier you go to an Indian restaurant, the first thing they'll do is a cup of water they'll give you. Nowadays they say, do you want to buy a bottle of water? And we have become exactly like the West. The hospitality in any place was first a cup of water. Fresh water, that is how you connect, because water to water connects and you find balance. The water element, Swadhisthana Chakra, is about being at ease wherever you are, finding your balance in whatever environment you are in. Swa Adhisthana, you are established in the self and you find balance. So from food you get prana, from water you get prana. But these are gross level sources of prana. The most subtle source of prana is the air we breathe. You say, yes, sir. So in the air, there's oxygen, nitrogen. What is prana, sir? Is it nitrogen, sir? I heard someone say, do pranayama, you bring in all the prana, which is oxygen into the system. I'm like, seriously? We think we're becoming scientific, we are becoming more idiotic. See, prana is not oxygen, nitrogen. Prana is that which holds everything together. It is the catalyst that holds everything together. It is the catalyst of cohesiveness. A new term you have got today. A catalyst of cohesiveness is what prana is. And the moment there is no prana, you fall apart. What holds you together? What keeps you together? What is the catalyst that is enabling cohesiveness to be there? Prana. So you need to connect to that prana. You have to have a line to the prana. And the best line is prana ayama. And this is why people say, oh, it is expanding prana. Prana is already there in the whole universe. What are you going to expand? Seriously. It is like people doing the PhD. I am going to bring new knowledge to this world and, change everything. See, your PhD, you'll have like this much more. If you look at a big Venn diagram, what people know, your small, small dot will be there. That's all you're going to do, okay? But you should hear people talk when they give their PhD viva. Huh? Going to change. Seriously. I'm going to expand prana. Prana is already there every place. It is all pervasive. In fact, our scriptures say prana is Brahman. Huh? And you know what? What is the visible Brahman? The visible Brahman is Vayu. The visible Brahman is Vayu. Tvameva pratyaksham brahmasi. It is said when we use the Vedic chant, Shanno mitra shanvarunah shanno bhavatvaryama. In that it says, you, O Vayu, through which the prana is moving, I understand you are the visible manifestation, the tangible manifestation of the intangible Brahman. So when we are doing the pranayama practices, we are not expanding prana. Prana is already expanding. We are expanding our capacity to connect to the prana. We are enhancing our capacity to perceive and connect to the prana, so that instead of depending on the prana from food and prana from water, we are now connecting to the most subtle form of prana, which is coming not only to the Vayu, but even beyond it, the subtlest form through the Akasha itself. Because prana is not just limited to Vayu, it's there in Akasha also. Vayu is not there in Akasha. Air is not there in Akasha, but prana is still there, because prana is there every place. And that is why when they call pranayama breathing exercises, even today, I was watching a video of our Prime Minister's talk yesterday, and he talks about breathing exercises and pranayama. I felt so bad. Whoever writes that script for him should be corrected. Last night, some of you saw me correcting one of my students who used the term yoga and pranayama. Because it is not yoga and pranayama. Pranayama is an essential component of yoga. You can say asana and pranayama, not yoga and pranayama. Where did we get this type of nonsense into our vocabulary? And then people talk about yoga and meditation. That's another one. Dhyana is the heart of yoga. Dhyana is the heart of yoga. You have taken the heart out. You have done a cardiectomy, appendicectomy, tonsillectomy, cardiectomy. You remove the heart. Heartless yoga is an artless yoga. I told you yoga is all about connectivity through the heart, the anahata. And we take it out. Just because the term meditation became famous and everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon. If you jump on the bandwagon, you are a passenger. You are not the driver. Be the driver of your own destiny. Don't be the passenger in somebody else's destiny. Dhyana is an essential component. So just to correct that, pranayama is not breathing exercises. Breathing exercises are breathing exercises. Pranayama are the yogic techniques. Use the term yogic techniques. They are the yogic techniques to enhance our understanding and connectivity to prana. I hope I'm being clear with all of you. That's why I asked you to keep your video on so I can see your heads nodding either this way or the Indian style where we nod all direction and nobody knows what we are doing. We want to enhance our capability, our sensitivity to connect to prana, because if you are not sensitive, you will not even know it is there. Some of us are so desensitized, we don't know other people are in the same room as us. And that is why prana you have to enhance your awareness of prana. You have to enhance your connectivity to prana. You have to enhance your capability so that the prana can come in. You have to open your heart up for the prana to come in. Hriday prano. That prana in the heart area will be there. That is where it comes in. There has to be a connectivity. So if you want to translate the word ayama, I like to use the word enhancement. The enhancement of our awareness of prana is being done through prana ayama. You are not expanding prana. And then they say, oh, you are expanding prana. You are making prana more. Okay, then why do you do kumbhaka? See, I can understand you breathe in and you got a lot of prana. Then why do you breathe out? Oh, it will go out, right? So you keep on and kill yourself with the breath held in. You cannot kill yourself with the breath held in. Your brainstem will say, this idiot wants to die by holding the breath, and it will override you and make you, come back to normal. So you cannot die holding your breath, okay? But many people, many kids threaten the parents that way. I'm going to hold my breath till I die because you didn't give me that chocolate. No. See, when you hold, when you breathe in, what is happening? You are being aware of that universal prana now coming into you. That universal prana is becoming you. The ocean is becoming the drop. That is as you breathe in, the puraka. Now when you hold in kumbhaka, that drop which is in you now is starting to experience what it feels like to be the ocean. The ocean in a drop is when the kumbhaka is there. The ocean becoming the drop is puraka. The drop experiencing what it is to be ocean is kumbhaka when you hold in. When you breathe out, that drop is becoming once again the ocean. And when you hold out, you're experiencing what it is for the drop to be part of the ocean. That is what is happening. The ocean becoming the drop, the process of it is inhalation, puraka. Now, I'm using the word inhalation just to give you clarity. Inhalation and puraka are not synonyms. Puraka is when the prana is coming in and you are experiencing the universal Mahaprana becoming an individualized Jiva Prana. The Mahaprana, the Vishwa Prana is becoming a Jiva Prana. I'm using some terms here so you get a flow of it. When that prana comes in, now in the individual you are experiencing what the ocean is. The ocean in a drop is kumbhaka. So still there's an enhancement going on, an enhancement of your understanding of prana is happening. You're awakening to what this prana is, what the Vishwa Prana, Mahaprana, Mukhya Prana is. And when you breathe out, it is an opportunity for that individuality to go back into universality. And then when you hold the breath out, the Bahya Kumbhaka, which we call Shunyaka, vacuum state, is where you experience a connection to the universal prana directly. It is like Sushupti. It is a mini Sushupti state where you experience what it is to be the universe. This is what is happening when you practice pranayama. You are not just exercising your lungs, okay? You are not just increasing your vital capacity. There are so many other methods to do it. Then why do pranayama? And that is why in this tradition, we talk about at least 120 pranayamas, of which at least 40 pranayamas are taught when people go through either the step-by-step or they come for the training. So we don't just limit it ourselves to, just saying, oh, there are Ashta Kumbhaka and Nadi Shuddhi, Nadi Shodhan. That is a very limited perspective of pranayama. Pranayama is much, much bigger. So the two important aspects I wanted to share about the Gitananda tradition today for you was the importance of energy, being aware of energy in every practice that we do. And the second is the importance of pranayama sadhana, because without pranayama sadhana, you cannot connect to the cosmos. And without connecting to the cosmos, then it's not yoga at all. If you don't connect to the source, see, the whole universe is energy. The whole universe is energy. And we are energy beings. And the same energy in you is in me and all of us. And yes, also in those mosquitoes also. The same energy. It's in the toads and the cockroaches and the snakes, and it's in us human beings. The same energy. And that is why the Guru Stotra tells us Madatma Sarvabhutatma. The Atma that is in me is the same Atma in every being. So if you don't like the word soul, spirit, Atma, call it energy. Think of it as energy. And immediately you realize we are all energy beings. We are all connected by energy. We are connected to the universe through energy. So important. And that is why when we connect to the energy, then we can start to be alive. Because if energy is not there, if prana is not there, it is so beautiful when you think about it. A statement that says we are basically Shiva. We are basically Shiva incarnate. Now, this is a Shaivite version. The Vaishnava version will say we are Vishnu incarnate. Okay, so don't worry about it. We are Shiva incarnate, but when the prana is not there, we become Shava. So we are Shiva when the prana is flowing, because what is Shiva according to Adi Shankara? Tadeko Vashishta Shiva Kevaloham. When everything has been negated, we realize we are that pure auspiciousness which is known as Shiva. What is that pure auspiciousness, that pure transformative principle of the universe? The source principle of the universe. That is what he calls Shiva. And we are Shiva in human form. We are the divine playing Halloween costume party. We are the divine playing costume party, Halloween costume party in all our horror forms. But you know what? If the prana leaves, Shiva becomes Shava. And that is why in this tradition, the importance to understanding prana, working with prana, and understanding the importance of energy in every practice has been brought out. Swamiji came to Pondicherry and became part of a South Indian Saiva Siddhanta tradition that traces itself back through 8 gurus to Kambali Swamigal, one of the great Siddhas of Pondicherry, and goes beyond him up to the Rishi Agastya. So on one side, tracing back, you say, where are the birth and death certificates? They don't exist. And this is why the other day, one of my friends, Manmat Garote, who is the son of the great researcher from Kaivalyadama, Dr. Garote, Manmat was saying, he said, in India, the yogic tradition has 3 types. The most grossest level, lowest level is the written tradition. The most subtle is the oral tradition. And he said, even more subtle, there's a subtle tradition. What has happened today is we have forgotten the subtle tradition and oral tradition. And we think we just want the written tradition and we think that's all. The yoga tradition was never just the written tradition. The written tradition is only the fingertips of the whole body of yoga, just the fingertips. And today we think the fingertips are the whole. So I think I would like you to have this idea that we don't want to limit yoga to the box. We want to connect yoga to the source so that it is alive. We want to understand the energy matrix of yoga. Because when that energy matrix is not connected, automatically you move away from ease and you go into disease. From a state of sukham, ease, you go into dukkham, which is suffering and disease. And that is why this trigger, what is the trigger for sukham becoming dukkham, ease becoming disease? Well, the trigger is what is called dvaitam or duality. Duality is the root. Because what happens when you perceive someone or something to be different than you, already a split has occurred. And in that split, you lose the state of ease. And this is where, when the mind and the body split from each, the mind says, I don't like you. And the body says, nor do I like you. And what happens? Psychosomatic disorders. Simple as that. And most people, the mind and body are like 2 people who hate each other to death, having to live in a single bedroom flat for the whole life. And that's how most people are. So imagine no wonder we are in disease. So we have to reconnect. We have to move from duality to non-duality, because duality, Dvaitam, breeds fear. Fear of the unknown stranger. Fear of the other. and immediately fear breeds the whole stress response. Stress comes from fear. Fear comes from duality, dichotomy. And the moment I say you are different than me, I am scared of you, immediately my whole hypothalamo-pituitary adrenal axis has kicked in and I'm into survival mode. We have to move from survival mode to living mode. That is the most important journey we need to make. Now, today has been a very tough session for me. And the reason is to keep it short. Because I'm so used to these days teaching for 2.5, 3 hours that when I saw 1 hour, I was like, this is going to be a tough one. But I'll be coming back at the end of the week to again be with you. And Nilachal, maybe we'll look at a few questions for a few more minutes and then we'll close today. The idea was to introduce you to this tradition, not by saying, memorize the guru's name and blah, 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 blah. That's not what, because we are not a sect. We are not worried about it. We honor our tradition. We honor our ancestors, our spiritual ancestors. But, you know, we are not into this blind idea of everybody touch my feet. No. If I touch my mother's feet, it is out of respect and reverence. That's what it is from gratitude. When you hug somebody, it should be from love, not because of what you will get from them. And this is where we have to be very careful, because outside everything looks the same. You have to get into it. So with those words, Nilachal, maybe we'll go into a few questions.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So there are a few questions regarding the pranayama question, that what is the actual definition when it is said that I am is expanding, but you have explained here that I am is not.
Yeah. See, all the Sanskrit words, somebody has said it is expanding, and so we think that is the only word. What I'm saying, Indian culture is a living culture. It's a living tradition. So we have to keep on expanding our awareness, and we have to try to find new words to understand the meaning better. Because if you say expanding prana, when you do shunyaka, what are you expanding? And what I'm saying is, if you use the word, English word expanding, it doesn't make sense except when you breathe in. There's no other point at which there's expansion. But enhancement is occurring in all the 4 phases. So what I'm saying is, we need to retranslate many of these words. So ayama as enhancement, because you can go deeper, you can go higher, you can go wider, and it's all enhancement. But going deeper may not be called expansion. You know, when you're in Kumbhaka and you're holding the breath in or out, where's the expansion? So in the context of pranayama, we need to understand, people who have translated their scriptures have been scholars, not yogis. Yogis have to retranslate and reinterpret all our yogic scriptures. Because it's like me telling someone who knows Spanish, translate a medical dictionary and they don't know medicine. Okay, someone who doesn't know medicine, translating what they will understand of the medical term, it's not going to be the complete picture. You need someone who understands medicine and the language. Because otherwise what happens? Chin mudra, gesture of consciousness, when it was translated into French, became mudra of the chin. Because the person who saw CHIN thought they meant the chin, and they translated it as mudra of the chin. So this is the danger in translation. So we need to look at it again. So saying expanding is only one. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying that's how it has been taught. But what we need to do is we need to relearn, unlearn and relearn, because otherwise we are missing the bus. Yes, please.
So there is another question.
Yes.
It says, why is Hanuman known as Mukhya Prana?
Hanuman. Yes, because
Yes.
he is Vayuputra. See, in our culture, everything is connected. Pavana Sutta Hanumani ki jai. Pavana Sutta, Vayuputra. And what is prana? It is the subtle aspect of Vayu. That's what I said. Shanno Mitra Shan Varunaha. In that it says, I understand you are the Vayu, you are the manifestation, the physical manifestation at the gross level of the Brahman itself. So what we are saying is, Hanumanji, he is Vayuputra, he is Pavana Sutta, not because Vayu came and, okay, now I'll be dignified here. Not that he was a father in the gross sense, which is how people talk about this thing when they are trying to be rational. Irrational rationalists that we have in our country are like that. Total dumbos. I'm sorry for that, but that's what they are. They ask questions like, like the Greek gods, they talk about so and so God came and, had sex with somebody, and so you have this person and all that. It's not like that. What it means is Hanumanji, he had connected to his divine father. Like we say Ishta Devata, Kula Devata, Hanumanji was able to connect to the source of prana through Vayu, and he had that great heart. That is why Sri Ram Jai Ram is in his heart, not in his head. He doesn't open his head and so shows Rama. He opens his heart because prana, hriday prano, that connection in the heart, you have to open your heart. And so Hanumanji is in the heart. In his heart is Rama. He connects with the Vayu. Through the Vayu, he connects to the Pavan. Through the Pavan, he connects to the Prana. And that is why we have Pranasya Kumara is another name for Hanumanji. Not just Pavana Sutta Hanuman, not just Vayu Putra, Pranasya, Prana. Yeah, as I said, it came out, now it's gone out. It's in Prana Kumara. Yes, it's in one of the compositions. Prana Kumara Hanuman, it comes. And this is what we need to understand. These are not just, stories. These are spiritual truths hidden in the story. You have to go deep into it. Yes, please.
So another
I hope,
question.
Anjana, you understand Mukhya Prana. I hope it's clear now. Yes.
So regarding Shavasana.
One second. Hanumanji is the manifestation of all the Ashta Siddhis. Ashta Siddhi and Navanidhi. Remember that. Why? Why does he have Ashta Siddhi? He is connected to the Mukhya Prana, and all the Siddhis are resultants of that connection to the Prana. So that is another connection that is there. Yes, please.
Yes, sir. There is a question regarding Savasana. In Savasana, we keep hand apart. Does it also lose energy? Yes.
Okay. It's a good question. Now here what is happening is, if the arms are by the side, the energy loss is not so much as if you have the feet apart, because if the hands are apart and the feet are apart, the whole thing is lost. But when you keep the heels together, you have already created a closed circuit energy. And so the hands actually do not then play a role, because you have created a space for the closed circuit with the upper part and the lower part. So the head, from the head, the brain, right down to the toes, you have connected it. So the arms become an additional side aspect. So it is not needed to keep the hands next to you. Some people like to clasp the hands and place it over the abdomen when they are lying in Shavasana, which is another way to also think about it. But the hands do not have so much of an issue as the feet, because the feet are the other end of the circuit. It's like the top end of the circuit and the bottom end of the circuit is what you are focusing on to create that circuit here.
So one more question, sir. Do consciousness, drishta, and prana, the energy, are the same or not?
So that's a tough question. That's a tough question, because you see what happens is pure consciousness is beyond everything. So there's always a big doubt about it, because pure consciousness, which we call Ishvara, is beyond everything. And then you have the Prakriti. So there is a question, of course, but I have given an answer earlier, which I'll give here also. Prana is a synonym for Brahman. Now, Brahman is a Vedantic term. Ishvara, Drishta, Purusha, these are more Sankhya and Yoga terms. So I would say prana is ultimately that pure consciousness itself, because the pure consciousness is energy also. So I would say, yes, they are one and the same, but it's very difficult because sometimes with these terms, there's a specific meaning behind it. I attended a beautiful lecture on Sanskrit by Sampadananda ji this morning, organized by Balaji and Achyutan at the Center for Yogic Sciences, where he delineated the difference when you use the term deha for the body, or you use the term kaya for the body, or you use the term sharira for the body. Deha is also body, Kaya is also body, Sharira is also body, but the implications of each word is very different. So similarly, when we talk about Purusha, when we talk about Ishvara, though ultimately they're one and the same, there are differences. When you talk about Drishta and Prana, though they may be the same, there are differences. So I will say that we need to look at the fact that they are like the same with plus or minus. So you say this is equal to this plus or minus. That way you can then have a much better understanding of these concepts.
So we will take one more question, I guess. I guess. So Patanjali Yoga Sutra has a very less number of asana and pranayama, but now we have a number of asana and pranayama. From where will they come from?
Yoga is a living tradition. Anything that is living is constantly evolving. So in the time of Maharishi Patanjali, Patanjali's concept of asana was as a state of being. Because Maharishi Patanjali's concept of the Ashtanga are states of being, not really something you do. So asana as a state of being was more the concept. But from the Atharvana Veda, as I said, the Tantric traditions have evolved. From the Tantric traditions, the Hatha Yoga traditions have evolved. So there is a parallel. Then people say, is Tantra different than Yoga? No, they're all one and the same. Because Yoga is the big Venn diagram and all of these are small circles in that big circle. So there's no distinction. So the Hatha traditions came in. And the Hatha traditions, as they came in, the Natha Sampradaya, we owe most of the practices to the Natha Sampradaya in the north and the Siddha, Saiva Siddhanta and the Siddhas of South India. So the Natha traditions, they started to understand that the body position affected the mind and the mind affected the body. So they started to find when I'm in these elevated states of consciousness, what is happening to my body? When I put my body into these positions, what happens to my mind? And through this experimentation, they started to give us practices, and we must not forget. Shiva Samhita says 8.4 million asanas. So the numbers are there. So people who say asana is a new invention and Krishnamacharya got it from Western gymnasts, I'm sorry to use the term, absolute bullshit. Absolute bullshit. This whole idea of trying to say that it was some Russian gymnasts who have given us the modern yoga tradition is total, utter, butter nonsense. Amul butter method, utterly nonsense. I'm sorry for my language, but someone has to say it. Someone has to say it because we have these modern scholars trying to twist everything because then they can deny the connection to Sanatana Dharma. They can deny the connection to that tradition that is kept alive in India. Now, along the way, what has happened is the different sampradaya traditions started to grow. And each tradition started to focus on different aspects of yoga. So some would focus on Laya Yoga, some on Bhakti Yoga, some on Karma Yoga, some on Dhyana. And as the Guru started to pass it on, they become like specialists and super specialists of that part of yoga. And you have traditions that are totally specialized in Kundalini Yoga, not this modern Kundalini that you find abroad, which is, and come back to India now. All this has gone abroad and come back to India, and we are buying a second-hand nonsense that is not really yoga. What we need to understand is that the traditions have evolved along the way. Now, in the last century, it has sort of become even more as many more got involved and yoga sort of came out of sort of its hiding spot, became a bit more public. There were more evolutions happening and the traditions changed as it went on. Now, 60 years ago, my father put together the yoga step by step. And that step by step has about 300 different asanas and so many pranayamas and kriyas at that time that were part of that tradition. As we have continued to evolve the tradition, our work with the young people at Yoga Anjali has evolved newer asanas based on the ability of the young people and modifications based on the individual needs. We find people cannot do certain practices. How do you modify it? And this is why we have to go forward. And yes, Singleton has it wrong. he has it wrong. And I am standing up because all these people in trying to, it's basically the same thing that has happened with all this DNA testing that people are doing. We are forgetting who we are and the real source. And we just want labels that say I'm 1.5% South Asian and 2.5% Greek and 3.5% from Sweden. That doesn't matter. What are you now? What is your connection to the source? What is the life that is moving through you that has been there for billions of years on this planet? What is that energy that has been timeless that is flowing through you? And that is what yoga is about. And we have really, really reduced it. And again, remember, the written tradition is the grossest form of the yoga tradition. And all these scholars are basing all the finding on the written tradition, which is the fingertip of yoga. And this is why people have to really get into the depth of it. I'm sorry to say these things, but someone has to say it. And more it's coming on my shoulders. Because for me, yoga is my divine mother. I will not let my divine mother be abused, misused, disused, or treated in a way that doesn't respect her. Yoga is my divine mother, and as a grateful son to her, I have to make sure that she is recognized for what she is. And we don't say, oh, your mother has, toenails that are pink. And pink is not a nice color. And this is what these modern scholars are doing. They're looking at the toenails of the woman and judging the woman. Would you do that? I would not do that. Would you judge somebody based on just what, brand of shoes they wear? That is what the modern yoga scholars are doing. In the name of academics, without integrity, what they are doing is they are judging. They are judging yoga by a few literature sources instead of understanding the spirit. Who is the woman in front of you? How beautiful she is. What she is in her completeness. I'm using the term woman here because we men have been a mess. The way we have treated women over history. Oh my God, seriously. Because we have judged people. How many amazing women were burnt in Europe and called witches just because they were able to connect to something, and men got scared of powerful women. And so everybody is like, oh, witches. No, it was the guys who burned them were the devils. Not the women were not witches. They were realized souls. And this is where we have to be very careful, because otherwise what is happening is the modern yoga scholars are on a witch hunt again. So be careful of who is going to be burnt at the stake. You brought a bit of gangster yogi out of me there. I try to keep gangster yogi under control, but Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in Dr. Ananda, gangster yogi comes out, especially when it's my divine mother yoga. Yoga is my mother, and it's not about my tradition. It's not about my institute. I care only about yoga, and I will not let her be disrespected. I will not let her be judged, especially by what color she paints her toenails. I will not let her be judged. Deep breath. Yes, Nilachal.
Yes, sir. Thank you for this wisdom, sir. And thank you for all the knowledge that you shared. And there are a lot of questions that they are asking in the personal message as well. And mostly they're related to the next coming up the days when we have the other sessions. So I think regarding the pranayama, we have the day 3 when Yogacharini Sangeeta ma'am will be dealing with the concept of pranayama and what is the difference between breathing and pranayama. So I will tell everyone and invite everyone to stay tuned with us for the upcoming sessions in the coming days. And if you have any questions, you can ask in our platform. And inviting for the tomorrow's event, the Dr. Meena ma'am will be there, and she will be dealing she will be taking the session on the topic pathogenesis to salutogenesis. So this is also the very most burning and the most the topic that we all yoga professionals should know. So stay tuned us, and thank you so much, sir, for everything that you said. The heartless yoga is artless yoga. The pranayam is the Wi-Fi connection of prana. And really, the sharing is really actually caring, and caring with love. That is the core thing that I think that we should take from this session. And everything, the tradition which yoga says about, it is not about any individuality, but it is with not me, but we. So thank you so much, sir, for for this whole idea to bring upon and inaugurating this 7-day Secrets of Yoga Therapy with us. And thank you so much, sir. And at last, I would like to just finish with the Swasti Mantra, Shubhkamna, that for the well-being of all the people over the world that they are facing in this adverse situation, and may they live a healthy life, they recover well, and to all the yoga warriors who are in front of the in front line, and they are dealing with all the problems. So it's a request to join with me for the Shanti part, Shubhkamna Sandesh. Shubhkamna Mantra. Om Swasti Prajabhyam Paripalayantam Nyayena Margena Mahisha Gobrahmanebhyah Shubhamastu Nityam Lokaha Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kash Dukha Bhag Bhave. Om Shanti 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 Sarvarishta Sushantir Bhavatu. Thank you all, and I invite you all again for the next upcoming sessions. Stay tuned with us, and thank you so much, sir, for making this happening. Thank you so much, sir.